Welcome to a brand new update on Bitcoin. I hope you had a great Easter holiday break. In this video, I want to talk to you about the recent situation in Bitcoin. And actually, this video is going to be quite controversial, as you're about to find out. So, as you can see here, as I'm looking at this chart today on Tuesday, Bitcoin has just had another surge higher. And I want to talk to you about the potential wave counts that we're dealing with here on Bitcoin. So I'm going to show you two alternative wave counts on Bitcoin and show you which of these is more probable. So firstly, let me show you this chart over here. Now, this is a line chart of Bitcoin. So it's not a bar chart, it's not a candlestick chart, it's a line chart. So we're only looking at the closing prices of Bitcoin. And on this chart, what you see here is that I've applied our own LT Elliott waves indicator. And this is the default setting of our indicator. And what this default setting is showing to us right now is that we could potentially be in the start of a brand new wave 3 of a potential uptrend in Bitcoin. Now, as you probably know, I have a different wave interpretation, which I explained to you in my previous video, so I'll come to that in just a few moments. But here's the thing. Before I explain to you the other wave interpretation, I want to first of all say that this particular wave count you're seeing here, that we're potentially starting a new 1, 2, 3 wave count to the upside, is perfectly valid. And there is nothing wrong with this interpretation as far as the wave structure goes. Let me explain to you why. For one thing, the reason why this particular interpretation of a potential 1, 2, 3 wave count to the upside could be correct is because, well, firstly, because we put in, as you can see here, a higher low. So after Bitcoin made a low here in December, we put a higher low in February, and then Bitcoin took out resistance here, as you can see, the previous high. So essentially it made a higher low, and a higher low is one of the signs of a potential uptrend. Not only that though, it's not just that. It's also the fact that Bitcoin has also gone above the 200 daily moving average. You can see right there. This green line you see here, this green line is a 200 daily moving average, and Bitcoin has now gone above that level, okay? In fact, twice now. The first time didn't succeed. The second time now Bitcoin has managed to close and go above that 200 daily moving average. Okay, so on a wave structure level and also on a chart analysis based on the higher low and the 200 daily moving average, it is perfectly possible and it's perfectly valid to argue that we could be setting up here for a potential new wave 3 to the upside. In other words, the potential 1, 2, 3 wave count to the upside of a potential bull market. Okay, that is perfectly valid. There's nothing wrong with this. And let me just say there's some good friends of mine who are very respectable chart analysts, and they believe that we are actually right now in the start of a new wave 3 in Bitcoin to the upside. Okay, now you're probably thinking then, why is it in my previous video I showed a different wave count, which showed this was a wave 4 as opposed to a wave 3? So let me explain this to you. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the settings of this indicator. What you're seeing here is the settings of our LT Elliott waves indicator. This is the latest version, version 9. And as you can see here, I put this right now. Right now, what you're seeing on the right-hand side is the default setting of our indicator. But I put into this indicator, I put into the settings an alternative. It's called delayed wave change, as you can see right over here. Okay, Alt 10, delayed wave change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a tick into this box. And notice what happens. When I tick this box for the delayed wave change in Alt 10, you will see what happens on the right-hand side. There it is. So that now changes the wave count from 3 to a 4. In other words, a corrective wave 4. All right. So you're probably thinking, why have I decided to change the default setting of the Elliott wave indicator from 3 to this new setting of a 4 in the alternate count that I've just shown you? So the reason is this. The reason I included this alternate count, the Alt 10, for a delayed wave change, is I only choose this particular alternate, this delayed wave change, in special circumstances. I'll explain to you those circumstances in a few moments. But this is an alternate. So this Alt 10 is something I would only apply, is a setting I only apply in special circumstances when there are external factors that don't quite make sense. Okay, so I'll explain to you what those external factors are. And I would only apply this alternate about 20% of the time, not all the time. So let me explain this to you. There are a lot of things happening in the background right now which are in conflict with a potential new bull market in Bitcoin. And these external factors have actually very little to do with the chart. Let me explain this to you. There is something in market analysis that we call sentiment. And you might have heard about sentiment before. But market sentiment looks at what the majority of people out there are thinking about the markets, all right, as a contrarian indicator, in other words. And what seems to be happening is that on YouTube and many social media channels, there has been a sudden increase in the number of videos that are coming up that Bitcoin has bottomed. So there have been a lot of videos coming out on YouTube that are saying, you know what, Bitcoin has potentially bottomed. As you can see, here's an example for you right here. So this is one person who's put a video up called Bitcoin Bottom Confirmed. And you can see what they're showing here. They're showing that Bitcoin has potentially broken a trend line and actually is now increasing. Hey, then you can see the projection here. The projection they're putting here is for a move up towards the 10,000, 20,000 level. So a very bullish picture on this video, as you can see here. So there's a lot of videos that are actually saying this. Here's another one for you. This is another video that was published quite recently. Again, this is just in the last week, by the way. This video is saying pretty much the same thing. The Bitcoin has broken a trend line. They're talking about a bump and run reversal bottom. Again, calling about a mind-blowing Bitcoin bump and run reversal bottom. And here's another one here. This one is another video talking about the exact same thing, the potential bull run and a Bitcoin bottom as well. The problem is this. The problem is that the majority of the time, markets don't usually bottom, or markets don't usually start a bull market when everybody is expecting it. All right? So let me just repeat that. Markets, the majority of the time, it doesn't matter which market, Bitcoin or stock markets or gold, it doesn't matter. The fact is that markets don't usually start a bull market when everybody's expecting that thing to happen. In fact, it's the opposite. Markets actually start a bull run or a bull market when everybody is not expecting it, or when everybody's actually quite very bearish. And it seems, actually, take a look at this. This is actually data from Jason Geppert. This chart is courtesy of Jason Geppert, and what he's saying to us quite recently is quite interesting. This is a chart of Bitcoin, as you can see on the top. All right, and down here is the sentiment. This is the public opinion sentiment. Okay, in other words, the majority of people out there. And Bitcoin sentiment hit an extreme optimism. As you can see, look at this. This red line here shows the optimism range. And look at this. This hit extreme optimism just very recently. And look at this. Bitcoin did not actually drop. It went sideways. I'll explain to you what that potentially means in a few moments. But let me explain to you what this extreme optimism usually means. Take a look at this. This is, for example, in the last bear market we had in Bitcoin. As you'll see, whenever Bitcoin hits an extreme optimism, take a look at this, for example, here. Bitcoin sentiment becomes extremely optimistic, and look what happens. Bitcoin actually right there starts to fall, as you can see right there. Here's another one for you. Well, that could have been one right there, but here's another one, more extreme one right here. Bitcoin hits extreme optimism. This one takes a bit of time. On this occasion, it took a while for Bitcoin to actually start dropping. It took about a couple of weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before Bitcoin started dropping, and then finally dropping much heavier until Bitcoin hit another extreme level. Take a look at this right here. Bitcoin extreme optimism, that spike you see right there, and then yet again, you can see Bitcoin once again started dropping from there. Here are some more examples for you. So again, in 2015, this one after a Bitcoin major low that formed right there in 2015, Bitcoin hit another sentiment, another public opinion sentiment extreme right there in 2015. And look what happened. It took a delayed reaction from Bitcoin. About a week or so later, Bitcoin continued to go a bit higher, but then look what happened. It started dropping. Again, some months later, Bitcoin once again hit an extreme optimism. And as I said before, sometimes it takes a while. About a couple of weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, Bitcoin then started dropping, as you can see here. And again, you'll see some months later, Bitcoin hit an extreme optimism right there. And here, again, about a couple of weeks later, after Bitcoin went up, and then it started dropping again. Okay, so usually these extreme optimism readings are contrarian indicators. Okay, it means that the public, are getting extremely optimistic about Bitcoin. And that means we should probably step back and be very cautious, because usually it means that Bitcoin probably might do a reversal in the next few weeks. So going back to this chart, what seems to have happened is Bitcoin has hit an extreme sentiment, extreme optimistic sentiment reading, but Bitcoin has not reacted to it. Okay, in fact, it's done the opposite. Bitcoin has continued to go higher. That potentially means that Bitcoin could be seeing a delayed reaction to that extreme optimism reading that we just saw right there. So one major reason that has me concerned that this rally we're seeing here is the start of a new bull market is the fact that the sentiment readings are in conflict with the charts. Okay, so sometimes there's a conflict between the sentiment and what we're seeing on the charts. All right, so that's one of the reasons why I think that we're still potentially dealing probably with a wave 4 corrective move in Bitcoin, all right, rather than a new start of a bull run. The second reason is this, something I mentioned in my previous video, which is a lot of the times, as we saw in 2015, Bitcoin, after a major bear market, sometimes puts in rallies, strong, powerful rallies, which look like they're start of a bull market, but actually both of these times, both of these rallies failed, and they came back to its previous, almost down to its previous lows. So we've seen things like this happen before. And there's also another reason, I would say a very important reason we need to be aware of, which is the fact that there's a tremendous amount of resistance near the 6,000 to 6,500 level. And I think it's quite likely that if Bitcoin manages to somehow get up to these levels, the 6,000, 6,500 levels, I think Bitcoin is going to struggle. I think any potential moves on Bitcoin to these levels, these resistance as 6,000, 6,500 levels, are going to be met with a lot of resistance. And we could potentially see short sellers taking control of the market around these levels. And by the way, I'll make a separate video for you as to why these levels, the 6,000, 6,500 levels, are so important. Okay, so we'll cover that in a separate video. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking. Some of you are probably thinking, well, that even if Bitcoin moves up to, let's say, 8,000 or 10,000, that I'm still going to be saying, no, this is a correction on Bitcoin? No, of course not. That is ludicrous and ridiculous. As I just explained a few minutes ago, this is a delayed wave change, which means we've changed the wave pattern, the wave settings, temporarily due to external factors which are in conflict with what's happening on the chart. And what I'll do is in a separate video, I'll explain to you what needs to happen on Bitcoin before we can have more confidence